Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning. Not sure why my video's not working, so just give me a second.
Good morning.
And thanks for being here at 2 a.m. You're a trooper.
No problem.
I know there was a issue with the link this morning. That's my fault. I apologize to everybody. It looks like 29 attendees have finally gotten the right link, but I'm going to give it a few more minutes just to make sure everybody who wants to be here can be.
Gregory, we've got an email saying it's asking for a password.
Yeah, I sent an update out through Parent Square, a second one that has a link with the password. I'll forward you the email or the password, April, and maybe you can,
Okay.
or is it to in our board account? I see.
Yeah. I just don't see on Parent Square the password. I see the link, but wait, the PWD, that's the password?
Yeah, that longer link works.
All right. I've got it. I'll send it to her. Thanks.
More personal Parent Square. I'm just checking the attendees list for the names of people who are having trouble finding the right link.
It just went away. Whose house is that?
Looks like there's one issue still trying to work out. Give me 1 minute. Thanks for your patience, everyone. Okay. Looks like the last person who was sending us messages was able to get in. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. All right. This is an emergency meeting of the Board of Directors of Desert Marigold School, officially known as the Valley of the Sun Waldorf Education Association. I'll say the opening verse and we'll get started. The true aim of education is to awaken real powers of perception and judgment in relation to life and living, for only such an awakening can lead to true freedom. That is from Rudolf Steiner. All right, so we are going to talk about two things today. The first one is an instructional time model that we need to submit to the state that would permit us to do remote instruction in the case of required quarantines due to COVID-19. Frank, do you want to walk us through what you sent over yesterday evening?
Yes, I was able to speak to Mrs. Hannah, who is on the State Board of Education as one of the officers, and she holds a title. I don't remember the title, but she's the one, when I called to ask the question, hey, we're a little confused. Can we use remote learning if we have to send students home? And she said, yes, you just have to fill this form out. You've done it before. I'm looking at your website now. You did it last year, but that expired. So you have to do it again for a new year and new school year and a new situation. The form is pretty simple. I sent you screenshots of the form and then just explained in a quick summary in an email of, obviously they want things like, well, who are you? Who's the contact person? What's the name of the school? The address, all that simple stuff. But then you have to answer questions like, well, what does a school day look like? What type of learning will it be? And I put into, on those screenshots, paragraph writing, summary writing of teachers would have students use Zoom and log on. Teachers would give direct instruction online for students to be watching online so that we don't disrupt teaching for the next 5 days. And I didn't say 5 days because they don't want it to be that specific. What we're filling out goes through May, so that if this comes up again later, it's filed and then it's up for us to utilize. Another question they ask, because they're very concerned with, is attendance. How do you log a student's attendance in this? And of course, we've been through this before. The teacher uses, number one, are you logged on? Number two, can they see your face on the screen? And then they send attendance to the front office, just like they always do when it's face-to-face. So we do have an answer to their question on attendance. And really, those are the two big questions they have. And then I put a little synopsis in there of why we want to utilize this type of learning, because I did mention we had what we considered to be a breakout of COVID on the campus, and for safety and health reasons, we're feeling like we need to send students home, and we don't want to miss educating them. We want to continue providing instruction to them. And I think that was the first paragraph I wrote to you guys, and you can see all of that. That form is saved and ready to send in. If this board approves that, we would do it. If you want me to add things to those paragraphs or delete things to those paragraphs, I would take your direction on that too. And I would just want you to email me your changes. And by the way, what you vote on today does not need to go to the state until September 30th. I think I made that clear in the email too, that today is to allow something to happen on Monday. That's why we had to meet in an emergency situation. If we want this to happen, it has to happen in a board meeting prior to the school day you're going to do it on.
Got it. Thank you, Frank. Questions for Frank on what he emailed us, the specific responses to those form questions? Oh, okay. All right. Well, in light of yesterday's events and Frank's and frankly, Deb Paulo's and the entire teachers and the rest of the staff, hard work in a very difficult situation. I want to start by saying thank you to everyone at the school. Yesterday was not an easy day by any means for anybody. So thank you for your very hard work on that front and coming up with this solution in less than 24 hours. So that said, I will move to approve the instructional time model as sent to the board by Mr. Marizio.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Tanner. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor? That is 6 of us. Danielle, are you able to cast a vote right now? I know that she was at the office today, so she may be tied up. That was 6 in favor. In any event, we'll count Danielle as abstaining for now. Oh, it looks
Sorry,
like
I just got kicked off. I'm back on.
Hi, Danielle.
Hi, I would be in favor. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, then that makes it unanimous.
Gregory, can I make a comment?
Yes.
I know we have a large audience, and so this is a good time for me to say this. I even recognize these names I see are not normally at a board meeting, so obviously they're here because of this circumstance and want to know more. I just want to make sure everyone still understands the feedback I received yesterday. And you're right, Gregory, it was a very difficult day, and I too want to thank the staff, Deb Paolo, everybody involved, for all the work put in. That being said, the feedback I'm getting is all over the place. I have families who are way over on one side saying, we told you we should have, this was coming, we're not masking enough, et cetera, et cetera. And I have families telling me, what are you doing? Why are you sending us home? This doesn't make any sense at all. And I just want all these families on listening right now to still understand this is not a win-win decision. We are split down the middle on this. And people like the board and myself and the teachers, we have to think of safety first. I can't explain that any deeper than to say it that way. And I know I'm not gonna convince the families who think we went home prematurely that they're wrong. I understand that. We all have been through this conversation before, that one side is not going to be able to convince the other side that I'm right and you're wrong. And so we just have to accept how others feel. That being said, I'm just trying to make sure everyone listening understands we still have it right down the middle. This is not an easy decision. That's all. I just want to make sure everyone hears that loud and clear, that it's not like I have 90% of the people saying, send us all home right now, or 90% saying, no, we can stay. It's okay. That's not what's happening.
And Frank,
That's all I wanted to say about that.
With this instruction time model, you were able to discuss that with the faculty? I mean, do you have a lot on board and willing and open?
The faculty understands. They are waiting for an email from me after this meeting to either say the board has voted yes for remote learning or no for remote learning. The faculty understands that certain grades are coming to school next week because they're not on a quarantine. So we did have an emergency faculty meeting after school yesterday to go over all those scenarios. And yes, we are prepared to move forward with it, whatever the board decides, which it just did.
Frank, one more piece that I think would be great if you could speak to all of the attendees today is the context of our coordination with the Maricopa County Department of Public Health and what led to the decision to quarantine students yesterday.
You bet. These, especially for the 50 people, participants watching today, it would be great if they understood my conversations with the State Department of Health and my conversations with the State Charter School Board of Directors. Deb Paolo has done incredible work. She has spent so much time on the phone with the state, making sure, with the health department, making sure we have the exact rules in place that the health department is saying, this is what we recommend you do. And so we have that all in writing. We have sent that home. Everybody knows this is the time you have to be off. This is how much time you have to wait to take a test. The length of a quarantine. She has made that crystal clear in emails to all of our families. The questions came up. Gregory and I talked yesterday, and he gave me the number of Ms. Hannah to call her because I had two questions. Number one, are we allowed to just go to remote on our own? And Ms. Hannah said, yes, you are. You can go to remote. Your past one expired. Your board just has to have an emergency meeting, decide that's what they want, and then it can be in place for the first day of school that you come back. We have now done that. My second question was, I have several staff members, teachers marry teachers. And so we have staff members who are married to teachers who work in other districts like Mesa and Tempe and Gilbert and Chandler and all over the state. And they were telling me, my husband or my wife in their class, the nurse comes in, pulls student X out and says, come with me. And then it becomes clear to the teacher that that student has tested positive for COVID. They take them out of the room and they immediately put them in their online program, which those big districts already have as an approved licensed mode of learning. The bigger districts do that. Most charter schools do not, unless you're a charter school that just specializes in that. Well, anyway, that student is removed and the rest of the class is not. They continue on. And so these staff members are saying to me, why can't we do that? And so I asked the charter person, Miss Hannah, why can't we do that? Is that an option for us? And she said, Frank, while I cannot tell you or your board, do this or don't do this, I can tell you that as a charter school, you face much larger complications if you do not follow the Arizona Health Department rules. The fines are something, they're very large, and there's something that charter schools just could not withstand $150,000 to $250,000 fine. Mesa School District, not so much a problem if they say we're not doing that, because that fine to them is something a large district can sustain. She told me point blank, as a member of the Arizona Charter Schools Board, and I work for them as well. She has two positions. She said, I highly recommend charter schools follow the Arizona Department of Health rules and regulations or protocols, however you want to call them, because you face larger financial woes if they call you on. And she did say most charter schools she's aware of who call her, then go ahead and follow those rules. So that was significant for me to hear, because certainly we couldn't withstand $150,000 or a $200,000 fine. That would put us in major rears financially. And by the way, that's not just the reason you do it, but certainly that's the reason that the Board of Health wants to lead you to say, this is what could happen if you don't follow the protocols. So it's my recommendation to follow the protocols so that we don't get in a bind financially.
Have any schools even been fined? I haven't found any research on that.
I didn't ask that question, so I don't know the answer to that.
Thank you for that background, Frank. And I think that leads us pretty well into the second topic for today, which is taking a harder second look at our current protocols for mitigation and frankly, our mask policy. And I don't want to get into a debate about the wisdom of masking or not masking or the politics of that. What I want to talk about are these health guidelines that we are, subject to as a charter school. And one of those health guidelines says that if you are exercising universal indoor masking in classrooms for students, if a student tests positive and that student was wearing a mask and all the other students were wearing masks, then the other students don't have to quarantine. That's a specific exception to the quarantine rules. And I know there are a lot of significant feelings about whether masks are appropriate or not appropriate, or whether students should be sent home to quarantine or not. But given the framework under which we are working, in my view, it is far better to err on the side of taking the steps that are required by our health department to keep children in class with their peers and with a teacher. So that's my general view. I'm open to hearing other thoughts. I know there are many different opinions on this subject, so I want those opinions to be heard today. I'm going to open it up for discussion before we take any type of action.
My first question would be, and this really is to Frank, is how many enrolled students are positive right now?
I believe, remember, I want to say it's either 5 or 6, because one of them, I think, is past time. They weren't someone that spread it on campus and kept them at home because the parent kept them home. But I think it's,
And those are 6 students that go across the board in many grades. And because from I just be clear that they're positive, that those students are positive, and not just the parents are positive.
parent. And then positive. So I had students with.
And are they believed to be in school while they had active COVID cases, or were they home for a few days and then tested positive?
They because remember, prior to yesterday, we had one of the gardens on a quarantine and wasn't come to school for 2 days. That was a separate student. So 5 of the 6 did come to school. The 6th student was in 1 year, but he or she absolutely tested positive because of a family member.
So you know that exemptions, that's their constitutional right. And I also calls from parents asking if they can to stay in school. Calls from parents also children grade class. These their religious exemptions held up.
We also consider
Several classes have already been doing outdoor stuff as the weather has permitted. It's a 2 weeks we've had several exemption days, heat advisory days, and we, as you know, some kids have overheated, and we've had to bring them up to the office and get them iced down. In some cases, send them home because it was really hot. And I know choir has been trying to do stuff outside. First grade, second grade have been trying to do things outside. Many teachers have, and now that the weather is supposed to start breaking, I think we're expecting under 100 for the first time next week. You may see more of that, but I certainly wouldn't want to mandate that on a class. They just know they have the opportunity to choose that if they wish.
we've considered staggering classes, doing alternate days or smaller groups.
We have not talked about that. We're talking about, and for 5 days right now, that's all we would need it. And Deb reported to me for tracing, it really would last for 4 days. Monday is the first time us from those classes that have been quarantined could act. That is a different rule if they don't have an negative test or they don't test. That would be the following Tuesday. But for the group that
make one way or the other
So
decision.
under the health guidelines, there is an exception to the quarantine requirements. If for students, if all of the students are wearing masks indoors and a student tests positive, then the students within 6 feet of that student or anyone else within 6 feet, no, I'm sorry, it's just the students within 6 feet of the student who test positive are not considered close contacts and thus do not have to quarantine.
And that includes the teacher.
It does not include the teacher. So the majority of the class time more than 15 minutes.
And if that were the case, as you stated it, would we still be notifying class that we had a positive report?
I would think we should still notify. It doesn't mean we would send people. It means we would notify.
Okay, I'm sorry to make you repeat yourself, Gregory, but I think I'm more.
Yeah, because it's technical and that's where we are. Ordinarily, regardless of whether you're wearing a mask or not, if you are within 6 feet of someone who tests positive, you're supposed to quarantine. For students in the K through 12 setting, which says if the students are around them, then students around the one who test positive are not considered close contacts and do not have to quarantine.
That's a reasonable.
So, so what we're doing is to about indoor masking and take away the religious exemption, because one, there's really no requirement that you have a religious exemption. And interstate travel is concerned, as I recently learned, international travel is concerned. There are no religious exemptions for masking.
What about religious exemptions for body autonomy?
I can't really answer that, Nellie. I can tell you that, at least as far as the federal government is concerned, that is a federal constitutional right to not have to wear masks. And I'm not aware of any ruling anywhere that has contradicted that.
Goals.
So the other piece of this is effective September 29th, a state law that prohibits requiring masks in schools. Arizona's I think we do so that we don't have to continually revisit this or revisit it every week, is decide whether we want to follow these health guidelines in a stricter way that allows us to quarantine huge numbers of students, consistent with what's legally possible. Or if we just want to wait and see, schedule board meetings and shift.
I understand that we're all in a tricky situation right now, and we are dealing with at large. And you know what?
You're
We have 91 on a religious exemption and 2 on a medical exemption. Not families, 91 students on a religious exemption and 2 on a medical exemption.
You know, 4 weeks ago, we were to have a religious exemption, and it really puts us in a hard spot if we're going to decide to take away that right to have the religious exemption. I understand what you're saying, that there might not be to say right away that masks aren't put under this, but if you're going to say the board meeting, you have a that could be level, and 5 students, the Arizona Department of Health, the low transmission according to their guidelines. Under low, we're in the blue section.
I don't think that's correct, Nelly. I think you look at it on a community basis, not on a school basis. And by any measure, Maricopa, any part of Maricopa County is in high transmission right now.
I'd like to share that our family, we do have, my daughter has a medical exemption for a mask, but she chose to wear one because how she was treated when she went maskless. Can we all remember to be kind, please?
Thank you for sharing that, Danielle. I'm we're in here.
For her work yesterday, she kept a cool head. I was with her throughout the morning. She acted what she did yesterday. A lot of darts and arrows coming at her, and she kept her head. And I really, she's a real professional. We're grateful to have. That said, I think there are some other things that we can be doing as a school to help with the situation. For example, wipe things down early in the day. I realize it's expensive to do that. That wiping surface it's said it's something that we take. Also, I would say in Frank's statement, a person on campus to help make decisions. I don't want to put so much pressure on Deb Apollo that she's forced into making decisions. A lot of pressure for person, and I don't know how healthy that is for against her. She's wonderful. She's done a fabulous job, but there are some other things that could be done by us. Some of the it does not comment on the mask part of it. Get a little when we start to talk about the erosion of civil rights. I know nobody has a right to get somebody else's IDs either. So there are a lot of really want to be careful. I don't want to take. I don't want to get battle with the governor either. Should we get there, I will abide by the CDC because I agree with you there that that's where we need to be, and that's been our general space. But it gets a little bit much when our civil rights begin to get eroded. You can't get back. And I everyone, be careful about surrendering your right. When you surrender those, yes, ma'am.
He said those who give up essential liberty to pursue a little temporary give up.
To implement a mask requirement. We're legally permitted to do it. And the American guidelines. Go ahead.
Continue. And that's why we haven't had at the end of last year, because she has missed so much time. And now we know why that company is reporting it to us. And so we're meeting with them on Monday to put back in that one now, wiping the outdoor down, and all the other things that haven't been happening out garbage has been spotty. And you know why now?
You know, for me, I feel like we're a community, and this isn't right. This isn't drum, and we need to do what's right, in my opinion, for the community. And we tried it with the exemptions, and it kind of worked. But now there are kids, our DMS kids at home right now, they're sick, and I'm not sleeping well about that, because I feel like we could have done more. And if you feel like that's a civil rights thing, then you know that's how you feel. I feel like we need to be responsible and take care of all of our collective children. So for me, I'm in favor of, you know, being stricter on the masks. I don't want to go back to online learning. My kids don't do well there at all. When we're talking about mental health issues, and people are like, "Oh, you can't mask your kids because it's their emotional unwell-being." What about the kids that are at home struggling in front of the screen? Because those are my kids. And you know, I would rather be safer and have more kids on campus and only take out those few as needed than have to go to full quarantine of multiple classes. And that's just my 2 cents on it.
It would be nice if we could also if we're not doing this, maybe there is a better way to deliver a type of education. But I also want to know that even if we decide that we're it's still out for those 5 or 10 days, and so it's the same either way. I am going to need to excuse myself. I would really like to vote, but I'm at work and I'm needed. I don't know if there is a way we can push forward or if more discussion is needed. I've already met 2 clients that I should have been listening with.
Danielle.
Yeah, thank you, Danielle. Mr. Tanner, did you have one last thought? I think we've got a.
But we have, this is maybe a little bit out there, but we haven't established that these children got sick at Desert Marigold. They got sick from their parents at home. Are we saying that or not saying that?
I think in this family's case, because they stepped forward, that is true.
So we can't trace any transmission to Desert Marigold whatsoever.
And
We don't know. And what's it going to look like in 2 weeks? I mean, how many kids are going to test
You don't
positive?
know.
I don't, but neither
I'm just saying.
we don't know.
Well, do you wear a mask? You're so concerned. Do you wear a mask at home?
Nope.
Your children? I mean, because
for Danielle to be able to have an opportunity to vote. So that I will general revisit it too frequently. That's let me give it a go. And April, bear with me. All right. So I will move that DMS follow the CDC and Arizona Department of Health and Maricopa County health guidelines, including indoor masking requirements, as long as following those guidelines is legally permissible under both federal and Arizona law, including sorry, we can stop there, put it, and then say following these guidelines means that exemptions for mask requirements will be given only on a medical basis. Put a period there. And then we can say this policy will be effective immediately. And if you'd be kind enough to read that back to us, April.
I typed fast, so bear with me because I know I made some typos here. Hopefully I can read them. Okay, Gregory Schneider moved that DMS follow the CDC and Arizona Department of Health and Maricopa County health guidelines, indoor masking requirements, federal law. Following these guidelines means that exemptions for mask requirements immediately.
I know that we're all in a really tough spot. And that the opinions are not well liked by many people. And I know that they want to be heard because to very, very fine line removing religious exemptions right now. And what's going to happen if you show up on Monday and you have 91 medical exemptions?
Well, we'll have to deal with that when we get to it. It's, you know,
There are states in our country taking away religious exemptions, and that's at a state level, and it's not pretty what happens in those states. It's a really to have it be on such a micro level. This right as a lawyer, Gregory.
there is not a constitutional religious right to not wear a mask.
There's a constitutional religious
And
right
you
to
can
have
find
your freedoms and to have what you believe and to go about your life of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And again,
Nellie, if there's one thing I've learned as a lawyer, there are no absolute rights. And what you're advocating for to me sounds like an absolute right to do whatever you want, wherever you want, regardless of the consequences. And that is what I'm suggesting that we do.
I just needed my voice to be heard for the people that are behind me that want to be heard.
Thank you, Nellie. I appreciate you articulately expressing that. Even though we disagree, this, Nellie. I think and based on where it is indoors.
When we come up
like I said, have
So if I show up with large tents on Monday, my teacher, and they have the ability.
No, the teacher needs to come to me. Not a group of liberal instruction fashion every second. There are many portions of curriculum that need chalkboard, that need paint, that need, we do so many diversified ways of learning.
I mean, I just see numerous schools all the way up. So, and I'll be willing to contact my children's teacher, and I'll be willing to provide them with if they
You're still on mute.
Would you repeat that, Gregory? The motion and just who it includes?
Yeah, April can read back the motion, but my understanding is it includes the entire school.
So any person who is, be it parent, student, teacher, faculty member, guest, whatever category they may fall into, they will be required to wear a mask when indoors.
Yes, unless they have a medical exemption.
Thank you.
Did you still want April to read back the motion, John?
No, sir. That you clarified the question.
All right. Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor? All right. Opposed? All right. That was Kirsten, Dan, April, and me in favor. Nellie, Danielle, and Mr. Tanner opposed. The motion will carry 4-3.
I need to excuse myself. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
hang on to.
Thank you for your time.
Gregory, I have one more clarification point. Is this like the last one that it's through September 28th? And as we wait for the governor's ruling, or no, we're going to operate outside of that?
So this one addresses that indirectly. So as long as it's legally permissible to require masking, then we're going to do it. So depending on how the court rules in this case, if the court says statute is fine, it's going into effect on September 29th, then we're not going to be masking on September 29th. We're not going to require masking, I should say. Anyone who volunteers to do it is free to continue doing it.
Got it.
But if the court says the statute is unconstitutional, it will not go into effect, then we will continue to have a masking requirement indoors. As long, and I should say, this motion also means that we will do that as long as it's required by the health department guidelines. So if the health department says, we're in very low transmission schools, you don't need to mask anymore, then we won't do it. But while we're still in high transmission and there's a requirement of universal indoor masking, then we will continue to do it. So one other point that I think is worth discussing is in the upper part of the middle school and the high school, for those who are fully vaccinated, there's a similar exemption to quarantine requirements if you are symptom-free. So even if you were exposed to someone who tests positive and you're a close contact, if you're fully vaccinated, you do not have to quarantine. So I think that may apply to some sixth graders and above, depending on where they fall in the class. So
Is that
right now,
is that even though the FDA is saying that now there's waning protection with the vaccinations?
yes, the current guidelines are still, if you are fully vaccinated, you do not need to quarantine. Even if you are a close contact, as provided you're symptom free.
Gregory, Deb and I talked about this last night.
Mhm.
Would we be requiring a proof of vaccination before allowing that to happen for a student?
Under Arizona law, we are not permitted to require proof of vaccination. So we are permitted to ask, are you vaccinated? Have you received your second dose? But we are not permitted to ask for proof.
And again, that is just to remain on campus. That has nothing to do with masks.
Right. Right. So, Frank, as you and everyone else at the school is navigating sending people home and quarantine requirements, and the remote learning that is going to take place next week, I imagine that there may be some students who are fully vaccinated and are symptom-free and would like to be back at school. And I don't know the answer. If there's going to be kind of a hybrid situation for those students, like we had for part of last year.
Can I ask a very pointed question
work.
in this case? We're talking 4 days. The remote than hybrid.
Mhm.
Hybrid is the worst situation there is because we know teaching kids sitting in front of you while trying to teach kids 18 miles away is not good. For 4 days, can we say we're just doing remote? I would hate a parent to, I know it would be a parent to say, nope, my kid gets to come. I understand that. But while them having to take on that challenge in this short notice, it may be we can prepare that for the next outbreak, knock on wood, there isn't. But to have them ready to do that on Monday is going to be quite a challenge.
So if you're asking for my personal opinion, Frank, I would say yes. Take these 4 days and do remote, and we'll call it 4 days, and that's it. And then we're going to kind of return to a more normal situation, and with the masking requirement in place, we shouldn't be in a situation where huge portions of the class are being sent home to quarantine. At least as long as this universal masking guidelines hold. Is there a legal requirement that we offer in-person instruction for those kids? I don't know the answer to that.
I would tell you, I would be talking directly to a parent who is insisting, and I will work through that on a case-to-case basis. I just hate to make it a blanket that I have, half of 8th grade here and half of 8th grade at home. That would create a very big challenge. It just would. So, who knows? Maybe there's only 3 kids, and that's a different scenario, and I'll work through that. But I just wanted you guys to know I would be asking those questions with parents. So.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a fair for this very short amount of time. Right? We just got to do the best that we can, given our limited resources, the circumstances.
Okay.
All right. Anything else we need to address in terms of quarantine protocols, mitigation protocols, instructional methodology during quarantining?
Frank, I just have one more thing. It was a little hectic yesterday, and I appreciate all the effort. I mean, there 4 p.m. and I help you guys, but I just want you aware that I mentioned before, and them being afraid, they were under the impression that there was an active shooter on the campus. That was what was perceived by them. So I don't know if this situation arises again. If there are classes that aren't going home when they're seeing kids being pulled out and students being rushed, being sent over to pick up, if we could put a communication out that, hey, it's not that big of a deal. Somebody has, so we're sending the class home, because my girls were terrified. And I know that they're not the only ones. I don't know where the information came from, quite frankly. But when you're a child and that's your perception, they told me that afraid because the kids thought that there was some kind of gun situation.
Well, I certainly understand how some people who didn't get the detail would be thinking it's something else. But I will also say that there are lots of kids who are scared. For lots of families, that is a big deal now. And so
I'm not saying it's not. We could say, it has to be real. If kids are being stuck on school, if kids are staying on campus, but other kids are being pulled out of the classroom, we have to come up with some kind of verbiage to just get the message in a calm, clear message out to the classrooms that this is what's going on. I mean, these kids were sitting in their head in a classroom thinking that there was some kind of situation that involved a gun on campus. And that was heartbreaking for me as a parent to hear my children think that.
Sure, I understand that. And you're not the only parent who sent me an email asking about that. And I can do that differently next time. But I do want you to know that there were other parents who were really happy that we sent them home immediately.
And I agree. That's wonderful. I'm just saying we need to have a broad message across campus so that everyone knows what's going on.
I hear you.
Mr. Tanner?
I'd like to motion that we allocate funds to hire the day porter to come in earlier in the day, and that we hire a school.
I will second that motion. All right, discussion on the motion.
What would the nurse be doing on campus? Would it be that same situation that we talked about earlier, where she would administer tests and then pull positive out, or just more of a general?
Well, both. I mean, we have children that get hurt all day long. Mm-hmm. We are now in a situation where we make calls about who is sick, create a situation where it's actually the flu or it's COVID. And as I said earlier, blessings on this. Look, she's done fabulous well to have to make medical decisions that are perhaps fully qualified to make those calls and might want to have someone else help them in making those decisions. There's also a tremendous amount of students that come into the office. Bonnie's trying to run the office, and personnel, their people are taken up with all sorts of issues, and they can't really do their jobs. And it's been a question for many years at the school. So it seems like if we want to do something, this might be something that we could take a look at.
That's fair.
Frank, I know we have some ESSER funds left, and I could use those funds for exactly this type of COVID mitigation situation. How much do we have left, and would it be enough to cover the day porter and a nurse at least for this school year?
Well, I thought I mentioned I already added the day porter at the beginning of the year, so it's already encumbered out of our ESSER funds. The issue is the person is very sickly and hasn't been coming to work, and we are addressing that Monday as she now has left the company and we're getting a new person. So that is already in, and clearly that can be covered by ESSER funds. I don't remember seeing that a school nurse can be covered by ESSER funds. And I do know our budget only had about a $40,000 carryover. And that's at 87, which is what we're at now in enrollment. And a nurse is an expensive job. Honestly, right now. Unless I do a part-time nurse, but someone to watch nurse sector is very challenging. Please know that changes the game plan that everyone's been clamoring of art streams and
Mr. Tanner, go ahead.
I wanted to thank Frank for everything he's done for the school. It's been tremendously stressful, and he really has done a fabulous job. And I don't mean to get into a debate with him on the day porter. That's no disrespect whatsoever. I just wanted to add that the day porter might be able to come in earlier, as in the past, at 10 o'clock. I realize it's an added expense, and she's a very nice woman, and she worked as hard as she could until she wasn't possible. And I'm really grateful for her service as well. But I was hoping maybe the day porter could be backed up a little bit, because you still have the children coming in and they're doing whatever it is doing. They used to come in, they used to wipe off the desks after making lessons. People were out at recess. She was going through there was a band we had for a while too. He was going through the bathrooms, wiping down surfaces, keeping the bathrooms clean and other common areas, high touch surfaces. So that's what I was asking in the motion.
All right. Other thoughts on the motion? Okay. All those in favor? right. All those opposed? All right. So that was Dan, Kirsten, Nellie, April, Carrie. So I think the motion is fairly general in terms of what capacity of nurse the school hires and the financial commitment that would take, and also the hours requirement from a day porter. So unless Mr. Tanner, you'd like to make a clarifying motion on those things, I believe that would be in your discretion, Frank, as to how you implement those.
I would agree with you, Gregory, and it is general, and it does require a little bit of exploratory work on the part of Mr. Maurizio. So thank you for passing the motion.
John, can I ask a question?
Yes.
You mentioned 10. What if I get them here just before lunch so they can do what you saw happening at recess happens at lunch? As I'm trying to hit a midway point on how much I'm spending here, I just want to be careful.
I think compromise. I'm all for compromise.
I couldn't hear you.
At the end of the day. Okay, I'm all for compromise there, Frank. Absolutely.
Okay.
If it's, but I think it needs to be before
I hear you
12
loud and
o'clock.
clear. Okay.
My
Them Monday morning, so that's what I will.
Right. Anything else on protocol mitigation strategies? Okay. I think we've covered everything. I want to thank everyone for a thorough and respectful conversation. I recognize that there were opposing points and taking the time to articulate positions are uncomfortable, and bringing your best presence to this meeting. And I would also like to thank the 50 plus attendees that we had this morning on extraordinarily short notice. I know that this meeting was significant for everyone here, and I would ask that we showed today into the community after this meeting ends. If one thing I saw today, and I continue to see every day at the school, is that everyone is trying to do the best for kids and for the school that we possibly can, even if we disagree on the method of what that looks like. So please continue to be respectful in candidly pretty disrespectful times. It can be the light in the community, but it's up to us to do that. So with that said, I will move to adjourn.
Thank you, everybody.
I second the motion.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? All right, that's unanimous. All right, I will say the closing verse and we will adjourn. The most important task for humankind today and in the future is that we should learn to live together and understand one another. If this human fellowship is not achieved, talk of development is empty. That again is from Rudolf Steiner. All right, thank you everyone. We will be adjourned. Take care.